Hey guys, welcome to Los Angeles, the practice facility of the Los Angeles Kings, the Toyota Sports Performance Center. He's Danny Shirey. I'm Dejan Kovacevic. We're from DK Pittsburgh Sports, and this is Penguins 24/7 live. You know why we call it Penguins 24/7?
Why is that?
It's pretty much the way we operate. I mean, certainly this time of year for me, for him all the time.
Yeah, it's and we're getting to that point of the season where everything's really starting to fall into place, and teams are about where they're going to be here, and this, especially with the trade deadline coming up here in a little over 2.5 weeks, things are chugging
Everything
along.
feels heightened. That's what it is. Like, okay, we're here. We've covered the first 2 games of the California trip, the obvious splits for obvious reasons, with obvious repercussions. Now, what ends up happening is tomorrow night in San Jose, and that's where we're traveling to after we get done recording here, is they got to win.
Well, they have to. They
can't. They got to win,
and it's not even that they can take some moral victories from getting an overtime loss out of tomorrow night's game.
No.
They need 4 out of the 6 points from this trip.
Yeah,
going home with 2 or 3 points from this trip is not going to.
When you look at who 2 or 3 of the opponents were, okay, the Kings were always going to be a tough one. It was a second of back-to-backs. Kings are actually the only good team in California, and they have to take care of business. But I don't think, Danny, it's just from the outcome standpoint. I think they needed to sort of continue what they believe, and I feel it's fair, is a better trend of play since the bye and since the All-Star break.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think despite that blowout to the Kings, we saw in the first part of that game that they did have their legs.
They were still doing it, yeah.
And they were doing what they needed to do despite the outcome not being there. But this team basically all year, I don't know that they've had a 3 or 4 game stretch where you're like, wow, they've played the way they're supposed to for the full 60 minutes. And, any stretch of games here, we might see it, over a 4-game stretch for half the game, then maybe a period, and then maybe they get 1 full game in there. But this is the time of year where they need to start building upon their foundation. I think the foundation is there. We're starting to see that after the bye here, but they need to start building up now.
And they need to build up the consistency within that. One doesn't come before the other. You have to make sure you've got the right people, places, and system and everything else, or people and system in place is what I meant to say. And then the consistency can come from there, or it doesn't. If you are on Facebook or YouTube watching this, you can leave us a question. Just put it down there in comments. Gary gets us started today by saying, please tell me Tristan Jarry is going to finally man up and start playing again. Man up makes me cringy there, Gary. That's a little too 1965 for me. No offense.
With that being said, Tristan Jarry, despite any status about how limited or not limited he was in practice, either here or in Anaheim, he was not limited. Today in practice, Dustin Tokarski and Casey DeSmith are still around, but Tokarski and DeSmith rotated at the far end of the rink while Jarry was at the other end. He did not rotate out at all.
This practice was set up for Jarry to start tomorrow night in San Jose. I think we can agree on that.
Yeah, and you could kind of tell, too, obviously the Penguins wanted to ramp up the pace a little bit, having had the day off yesterday, but they got Jarry a ton of shots, and a lot of them came like full speed off the rush as well. Mike Sullivan did say he thinks there's a possibility that Jarry will play tomorrow, but I'd say the stars are aligning.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he also made it clear that it would require a setback of some kind, which I guess the way his season's gone, you can't completely rule out here. Steven says Pittsburgh's the same team from last year. Should have blown it up last year. No.
I don't agree with that.
Why would you do that? Let me ask you this, Steve. Other than maybe just repeating something that you're hearing on the radio because it's the whole, they didn't have to get the band back together or whatever else here. Steve, who's leading this team in every single conceivable way? Scoring, production, leadership, in every way. Who is it? Who is it? It's the top 6. It's still the same. It's the same guys. They're playing well. They don't have support.
Well, here's the other thing with the whole, they brought the same team back that they've had the past couple of years. we saw one of the biggest shakeups this team has had over the offseason when John Marino and Mike Matheson were both shipped out to bring Jeff Petrie in.
Yep.
That the blue line is entirely different.
It really is. Half of the defensive core is different. You kind of Jan Ruda and everybody. By the way, Ruda's not going to play tomorrow night.
No, Ruda needs to be activated.
Just to throw that in.
Ruda remains on long-term injured reserve to be activated and accommodate his cap hit. All three of Drew O'Connor, Mark Friedman, and Dustin Tokarski are going to need to be sent down. The problem is that Friedman requires waivers, and he did not hit waivers today. So Ruda's return is going to have to wait a little longer. And just as an aside, Friedman is a little banged up right now. He did not practice today. And it does not sound like he will be available tomorrow night.
They changed plenty, and they also got a little bit better in the top six with Jason Zucker staying on the ice. I mean, they've had a consistent top six all year.
Yeah, I think a lot of people seem to forget that during the postseason last year, Jason Zucker was skating on the third line.
So these guys, I mean, this whole keeping the group together and everything, it's lazy and it's not even factually correct. Okay, they are getting results. They can't control everyone else's results. There's 18 skaters and a couple of goalies. Don't just repeat stuff that you hear from somebody else. It just that stuff drives me nuts here. Dan says must win tomorrow in San Jose. Must win is one of those, you kind of save those for the playoffs or later in the year, but I don't know that he's wrong.
No, I mean, like we talked about at the beginning of the show, you can't go home from this trip not having secured 4 or 6 points. And even just in a broader scope, I don't think that you can really live with yourselves having lost both your matchups with the Sharks in a span of a couple weeks. The Sharks are one of the basement teams in the league. I don't think they're quite as bad as a lot of people make them out to be.
They have people. Erik Karlsson's got 3 goals in his last 4 games, and one of those was against Pittsburgh back at PPG Paints Arena. Erik Karlsson doesn't look a whole lot different than his Ottawa days.
No, he's been a treat to watch this year, and he was pretty strong his first season when he came over with the Sharks, but he's playing at a level right now that I think we haven't seen in quite some time.
Katie says, "Hope you fellas are enjoying the trip out west." Are you? I haven't even asked.
I am enjoying this trip. It's been nice to get out here. I haven't been out this way. It's been well over a decade. I was just a little kid when the last time I was here.
You went to the beach?
I did.
I don't even know which direction the beach is anywhere I go.
I went to Seal Beach after the Penguins morning skate in Anaheim on Friday. I'm not a huge beach goer or anything, but it's like I'm here. I might as well go see it. And I walked the pier for a little bit, and that was a pretty good time.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot of beach in me. I go there and I look at it and I go, hey, this is pleasant. And then I want to turn around and leave.
Well, that's what I did. I went and walked the pier, and I was like, all right, I saw it. Time to go back.
I don't think it's I don't think it's all that great. Gary says, would you give Jarry a long-term extension based on his body of work so far? Would you pay him number $1? No way I would at this point. Gary, it's a difficult conversation to have because I was just talking with Brian Burke outside the ice rink, and I mentioned him just in conversation. I said, you realize you're 16-5-5 when he plays. And he turned around and he goes, 16-5-5. He wasn't aware of the specific number. Obviously, he knows about the impact. And I go, yep. He goes, So they know. Okay, they know the level of goaltending that they get when he's in there and when he's on his game. He is a .925 save percentage lockdown. He's also capable of better than that. We've seen him at .930 and higher. Okay, he is a guy who will get competitive with the goaltender at the far end. That's how he went into Winnipeg and outplayed, not just beat on the scoreboard, but outplayed Connor Hellebuck. He's done it to Andrei Vasilevsky. He's done it to other goalies where he looks at the other end. He'll never admit it. But those situations probably aren't coincidences. However, what do you do for the long term? That's easy.
Well, I think there's a lot of moving parts here. And one of the things that I struggle with is that up until last season, Jarry had basically been a league average goalie or worse up until that point. Now he's turned in 2 consecutive pretty decent or even pretty strong regular seasons, But if you look back to the most recent playoff series against the Islanders, which is the last full series that he played in, aside from that Game 7 in New York when he was playing with a broken foot, he was terrible. So I'm not sitting here and saying that he's still got to win a playoff series to prove himself, but I think there's still a little something there. And on top of that, there is a little bit of a concern about his ability to stay healthy, even though Mike Sullivan said it's just, happenstance that these injuries are occurring. And then the other thing is too, it's just risky business to get in bed over a long period of time with a goaltender.
Yeah, there's also that too. You don't want to end up with some kind of Bobrovsky contract. Regina says, is Sid playing tomorrow? The game misconduct doesn't transfer to any other game, correct? No, it doesn't.
No,
Sid's playing.
He'll play tomorrow.
Sid was in a fun mood today.
Yeah.
What was that?
So most of the time after practice or a game or whatever, the media access, you just go into the locker room with the guys and you can do whatever. But this specific practice rink, the rooms are so small that
this wasn't even a room.
Yeah,
it was like they were like curtained off in this area, like a high school team.
It wouldn't have worked the way it typically does. So Penguins PR will ask the media for a few guys that they want to speak with.
They can bring out to us. Like I asked for Ricard Raquel, and he got him out and spent some time with him.
So Dan Potash of AT&T Sportsnet was doing an interview with P.O. Joseph, and you look over and Sid's full gear, just kind of standing there watching like a dad or something.
It was unusual. Mark asks, do you think the Penguins will go after players that are more physical at the trade deadline? Oh, let me put that up here on the screen here. Okay. More physical, it depends on how you define physicality, Mark. That's now a different terminology in hockey.
Let me take this over here. We have got to get out of this idea that you just go get players who are physical. There's all kinds of different physicality involved in hockey, and physicality for the sake of physicality is not necessarily a good thing. It's how you use that physicality to positively impact your game, right?
Your possession, your
ability to suppress chances against, your ability to create quality chances further up the rink. Going out and getting a guy who just hits or is physical and takes himself out of position to do so because it's going to instill fear in the opposition, which is not the case, has never happened. It's foolish.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's never happened because there was a priority on it in hockey, and because all teams were doing it, it impacted the opponent more. I mean, I can speak to that.
Well, I mean, I'm talking in the modern game.
In the modern game now, it's let's put it this way, Mark. If you're thinking of a Brandon Tanev, then you're getting warm to what would have to work in the modern game because Tanev can play. Okay, Tanev's going to get you 10, 12 goals every year. B, Tanev is going to make a hit after first making an intelligent decision as to what that hit will result in, unless he's doing a pure energy shift, which also has a hockey benefit.
Yeah, so I'll use this as an opportunity to compare Tanev and his effective physicality to a guy like Sam Lafferty, who just ran around trying to hit people, and it wasn't effective.
When he was in Pittsburgh, Sam's, by all appearances, Sam's grown up a little bit with the Blackhawks. He never got a chance under this coach.
Well, I think part of the reason was because they asked him to play that overly physical, aggressive game. And you could see he's a bottom six guy, but you could see he possesses a little bit of skill. Every season he had an assist or two that would wow you. And, of course, he's the training camp hero that would have highlight reel goals during the preseason. So I think that definitely impacted his game while he was with the Penguins.
Jeff's breaking some real ground here on this show by saying that Timo Meier would be a good pickup. You know what? I was about to say, hey, Jeff, you're saying that the sky is blue, except that you can see here that the skies over California are not blue. They're actually kind of gray and a bummer. Jake says, do you think that next season they can get a valuable backup goalie? Well, valuable means what? It costs money. Okay. How much of an already cramped cap do you want to invest in your backup goalie?
Well, I don't even know how you answer that question without first deciding what the heck's going on with Tristan Jarry and his contract.
Yeah, before you're talking about a backup, I don't know if you realize, Jake, that Tristan's up after this season. That's a heck of a thing here. Gary chimes in, also breaking ground. Let's trade for Connor McDavid. LOL. I don't want to pick on you here, Jeff, but I mean, there's exactly 31 teams that would like to have Timo Meier. It's a matter of, how do you pull it off? And if you come back with suggestions as to how they could clear cap space and everything else, that's tough here. Brent, continuing the stream of breaking ground here, says, I think the players are just old and washed at this point. Brent, name names. Name names other than Carter.
Yeah, I'd say aside from Carter, the old guys are the best players on the team.
That's why I'm saying people say this stuff because they'll hear it on talk radio. Look, I've got people who are really, really good friends in talk radio, so this isn't personal in any way. They're not here. Okay, they're not covering hockey. That's not even a knock on them. It's not what they do for a living. Okay, so they're going to come up with whatever they think can get people like talking, chatting about stuff, and it's a catchphrase or a narrative, and it's going to ride. But if you come back at me, Brent, and tell me which of the Penguins' old players, other than Carter, is old and washed at this point, I would love to hear it. Comes from Reverse World, says, is Fenway Sports Group paying close attention to the Penguins and Ron Hextall? They can't be thrilled. I don't know if they're paying any attention.
If they are, there's
change the light bulbs at PPG Paints Arena.
Yeah, if they are paying any
they're
attention.
Not actually. That's why I bring it up.
If they are paying any attention to the Penguins or Hextall, there is absolutely no signs that they are doing so whatsoever. There's just no presence of them around the team at PPG. We never hear anything about them. So
Did you see them at the Winter Classic? I mean, that's actually their digs there.
I personally don't remember seeing them.
Okay.
There were a ton of people there and a crap ton of extra media as well. So they could have been there, but I personally did not see them there.
Jeff brings his magical solution, Letang for Meier. Yeah. Tyler says, any chance of a Phil Kessel reunion next year so we can see him get .1000 in a Penguins uniform?
Talk about washed old players.
Yeah, there's not a lot there. Phil is not what you remember.
No, and he was the one kind of guy who could get away with not really playing Mike Sullivan's system. He's not capable of doing that anymore.
No, he can't do that anymore. No, Phil is a different player right now. You might see him like on a highlight or even in the game that he played in Pittsburgh recently do something where you go, oh, Phil, yeah, Phil. But it's scarce, Jeff just won't give up. How about Brock Besser? I'm telling you, Jeff, we're all in on McDavid. But you know what? Only if it's a package deal and they throw in Draisaitl. All right? So work from there and get back to us, okay? Steve comes back and says, I'm in Winston-Salem, so I don't hear talk radio. They're past prime of this team and overpriced for production.
Sidney Crosby's
overpriced. Overpriced. I quit.
Sidney Crosby.
He's an 8.7 cap hit this year. I quit.
He's out of here. Listen, I get it, and it's easy to kind of go down that thought process. Like, yeah, the stars are old, and this team isn't performing at the level it needs to be. Sidney Crosby's still one of the top point producers in the NHL. Evgeny Malkin is still over a point per game player, and Chris Letang's performance has not been as good as it needs to be this season. But I would say that since he's returned from this most recent injury, that his game is definitely trending.
Is he gone? Is he gone? Is it safe? Is it safe to come back? Sid. Oh, no. Gary says, and correctly, that Sid, Gino, and Tanger are all underpaid. They're grossly underpaid. And I don't say that because they're greedy or whatever else. I'm just telling you, they're in Pittsburgh because they want to be in Pittsburgh and they want to be on a team with each other. Jeff comes back with Malkin for Meier. Jeff is
then Jeff Carter's your second line center, right?
Yeah, I like that. That's good. Brian says the goaltending position needs competition. It's an interesting viewpoint. Maybe Jarry plays hurt if he feels like he can drop to number 2. I'm not suggesting he risk his health, but it's tough to tell his desire.
The
first part was more interesting.
This team
does play better when he's got somebody pushing him. He always has.
When was the last time someone was pushing him?
It's been a while, but he did. He did.
Well, my point is when, though.
It was Matt Murray. I mean, it was a while.
I just don't think the Penguins have that kind of luxury to bring in another guy that's going to make it a competition for the starter's job or a guy where it's going to be a timeshare. They just do not have the salary cap luxury this season or next year. I know they're going to have quite a bit of money to work with this coming offseason, but that's because they're going to have quite a bit of holes to fill.
What you almost need in their Penguin situation is to catch lightning in a bottle the way this team, the Kings, have done with Phoenix Copley, where Phoenix Copley, the statistical anomaly.
It's like, 15-3 with a sub-900 save percentage?
He's 897 save percentage. He's now 16-3-2. That's just weird. Okay, but it does happen. Brent says, you can't say age hasn't caught up to them. Caught up to who? I'm waiting for a name here, Brent. Who has it caught up to other than Carter?
Maybe he's talking about the boogeyman.
I don't know. Give me a name. Say that age has caught up to Sidney Crosby. Do that. And then go look at his production. Say that age has caught up to Evgeny Malkin and look at his production. Oh, by the way, you know how many games they've missed between the two of them? Zero.
And again, that's not to say these guys are what they were when they were 24 years old, but that doesn't mean they're still not top players in this league.
Yeah, I mean, Gary says, I'm so tired of this age nonsense. We're gonna take a couple more today. Ideally, not with this, this silliness here. Let me see what else we got here. Heartbreaking. The Penguins feel like they're a heartbreaking move/trade away from actually becoming contenders again. Okay, you say that, but that sounds like the somewhat increasingly common notion that you have to trade a Jake Gensel or you have to trade a Brian Rust or something like that.
Which there's no way you come out of that trade a better team.
You don't come out a better team. You do move cap space and whatever else here, but the teams that acquire a Gensel, for example, are teams that are in contention now. Okay. And those end up being, not the kind of trades that would help the Penguins, because those are draft picks and whatever else. They don't want to give up a player off their roster either. So that was an absolutely ridiculous thing for anybody to bring up. If you consider losing a first-round draft pick heartbreaking, that might be your heartbreak.
Yeah, and
it won't break his heart. I can tell you that.
No, I'm all aboard with moving that pick. If you go and run down, even over the past 15 years, go and look at the Penguins' mid to late round, first round draft picks and see how they panned out.
Yeah, they're not particularly great at this. That's the other thing you need to take into consideration.
It's not even that they're not particularly great at it, which is true. They've struggled to squeeze a lot of value out of those draft slots.
Very few draft slots, in fairness.
But if you even just look across the league, I mean, there's so many hits and misses. Even further up, you look at guys that are drafted 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th overall, and you're like, who's that again? Or you maybe only even remember them because you watched the draft or were familiar with the top prospects at the time.
Lulu says, hey, you guys have a live feed now. That's great. And that's a great place to end this particular program. Thanks so much for watching. We are heading, which way is north? We're going to have to figure that out before we get to the car. But we're heading north.
One of these ways.
One of these ways to San Jose. And we'll do another one of these after the game.